Hey Comradeunity, it's Buddha Gem, and great video, great responses you've gotten so far about freedom of expression in a revolutionary period. So I'm going to go ahead and try to respond. It's great to see you making videos, brother. Keep up the good work. What I'd like to do is start with a little historical, put this in historical context. And I'll begin with a famous quote from Oliver Wendell Holmes. "The most stringent protection of free speech would not protect a man in falsely shouting fire in a theater and causing a panic. The question in every case is whether the words used are used in such circumstances and are of such a nature as to create a clear and present danger that they will bring about the substantive evils that Congress has a right to prevent." And most of us have heard that in either high school, college, somewhere, yelling fire in a crowded theater. And it sounds good, but it's complete nonsense. And the reason most of us don't know that is because we're taught this ridiculous notion without any context. The case involved a socialist named Charles Schneck, who was arrested in Philadelphia for printing and distributing 15,000 leaflets that denounced the draft law and the war. It was World War I. The leaflet recited the 13th Amendment provision against involuntary servitude and said the Conscription Act violated this. Conscription, it said, was a monstrous deed against humanity in the interest of the financiers of Wall Street. So, far from being a man shouting fire in a crowded theater, he's trying to help protect people from entering a theater of war, which has got to be the most dangerous theater around, right? Holmes' analogy was clever and attractive. But as Zachariah Chafee, a Harvard Law School professor, wrote later, a more inapt analogy for Schneck was someone getting up between the acts of a theater and declaring that there were not enough fire exits. To play further with the example, was not Schneck's act more like someone shouting, not falsely, but truly, to people about to buy tickets and enter a theater, that there was a fire raging inside? To understand that we have this notion in this country that when our soldiers go off to some foreign country and kill a bunch of people, that they're fighting for our freedom of speech. You hear it all the time, oh, thank you, the soldiers, they fight for our freedom of speech, and it's complete nonsense. People like Charles Schneck, Emma Goldman, Eugene Debs, Lucy Parsons, Albert Parsons, these are the people who are fighting, who have fought for our freedom of speech. And that's how it's won. It's by people like Charles Schneck practicing freedom of speech. So it's important to remember that. And one thing to think about when we consider, talk about possibly prohibiting freedom of speech, is that leftists in general have been the ones that mostly have been attacked by these types of anti-espionage laws, like Charles Schneck was. Now, to give you a little more context, I just wanted to go through Emma Goldman's arrest record to give you an idea of what anarchists have faced. This is just one example, but it's pretty good. August 30th, 1893, she was arrested for incitement to riot. September 7th, 1897, open air speaking. September 10th, 1901, she's arrested for inciting the assassination of President McKinley. She had nothing to do with that, but later the charges were dropped. January 27, 1903, she was arrested for being a suspicious person. This was the year after New York passes an anti-anarchism law. Goldman and Max Baginski are arrested in New York City for being suspicious persons. Cause of arrest, October 30th, 1906, incendiary articles and incitement to riot. January 6th, 1907, public expression of incendiary sentiments. December 13th, 1908, they got her for attempting to speak. December 14th, 1908, they got her for planning to speak. January 14th, 1909, conspiracy against the government. It's an easy one, they can always get us on that one. April 1910, cause of arrest, speaking. So they got her for thinking of speaking, planning of speaking, getting ready to speak, and speaking. May 20th, 1913, she was arrested for arriving in San Diego. They put her on the next train to LA, get her out of here. Why? Because she was going to speak. August 6, 1915, distributing birth control information. February 11th, 1916, lecturing on birth control. October 20th, 1916, distributing birth control information. Cause of arrest, June 15th, 1917, conspiracy to violate the Draft Act. Pulled in with this espionage act like Charles Schneck and Eugene Debs, a bunch of wobblies. It netted a lot of lefties, basically. September 12th, 1919, questionable immigration status, and then that's how they finally got rid of her, ship her out. So, that's just Emma Goldman, that's Charles Schneck. I can give you a million examples of anarchists being caught up in these speech laws, basically. And so, while we have, concern for hateful speech, the rhetoric of the fascists, the white nationalists, I think we have to be slow in trying to prohibit any kind of speech. I think what we want to do is really encourage freedom of speech as much as possible. As Chomsky's pointed out numerous times, freedom of speech means standing up for those ideas that you least want to hear. It's easy to stand up for the things we want to hear. Say, yes, we should be able to say this, but not that. We want those people to be able to speak out. It becomes a balancing act. You have to draw the line when that speech, starts infringing on other people's rights. But I don't think we want to get too caught up in infringing on other people's rights of speech, of expression. We want to hear, no matter how stupid your idea is, I think you should be able to express it. I think it should also be within a context of dialogue, an active dialogue with other people. Not that it, like we have now, where the media is monopolized by a small class of people who get to propagate their views, while the rest of our views are marginalized. There should be some way to allow for all kinds of dissenting speech. We saw the problems that anarchists faced in, the Soviet Union, in Cuba, in Spain. These aren't easy questions to answer, and I'm not trying to be glib about them. But my feeling is, we either go forward free, or we don't go forward. It has to be free. We have to believe in freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and like Bright Helm Fellows said, we meet that with militant opposition. When the anti-immigration group, the Minutemen, would show up in LA somewhere, we would show up with a bigger and larger contingent of people. We'd argue them down. We'd expose them for the racists they are. We did it again and again throughout Southern California. When the Ku Klux Klan showed up here in New York, huge contingent of people showed up to shout them down. You oppose it, but you respect their right to say whatever idiotic nonsense they want to say. I think that's the only way it can be, because we certainly don't want some thought police or speech police running around, because it ends up falling on us. As anarchists, as communists, as socialists, we're the ones that get rounded up in the Palmer raids and the Red Scares and the Haymarket affairs. They don't go after the fascists. They don't go after the white nationalists, and it's for good reason. So we shouldn't even be tiptoeing around this. Freedom of speech, freedom to say whatever hateful, idiotic thing you want to say. Doesn't mean you have the right to put hands on people, but you should have the right to your speech. So with that, I'm going to let you go, brother. Peace.
And during the few moments that we have left, we want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.